A well-educated, middle-aged male was brought to a psychiatric emergency department by police. The intervention followed a series of physical aggressions directed at his family. While he was medically stable, his appearance suggested long-term self-neglect. He arrived ill-kempt, with overgrown hair and nails, indicating a state of prolonged isolation. The clinical paradox began during the examination. He displayed no evidence of hallucinations and no formal thought disorder. To the staff, his cognitive functions appeared entirely intact. The underlying pathology was buried in a highly specific, elaborate delusion. For 5 to 7 years, he had been convinced that multiple intelligence agencies were conducting illegal surveillance against him. This narrative had steadily evolved. It began with the belief that physical microphones were hidden in his family home, and transitioned into a conviction that the government was using advanced wireless surveillance technologies. This paranoia manifested in the real world as a deep suspicion of digital payments. He viewed standard QR codes as hacking mechanisms designed to breach his security. His hypervigilance led to frequent confrontations with delivery personnel. He even removed the SIM cards from his mobile devices, convinced the hardware was emitting signals to his persecutors. On paper, the patient met the ICD-11 criteria for 6A24.0, delusional disorder. But the most dangerous variable in this case was not found in the index patient's chart. The index patient was not the only person in the household suffering from this surveillance narrative. His mother actively corroborated the existence of monitoring technologies. She claimed these agencies possessed capabilities far superior to those of any modern tech giant. The conviction extended even to his sibling. Despite living in a separate household, the siblings shared the identical belief that their residence was under government monitoring. Psychiatry classifies this phenomenon as Folie à Famille. It is a rare variant of shared psychotic disorder where a delusional system spreads beyond 2 people to encompass an entire family unit. In this system, the pathology is not confined to a single individual. It operates as a networked contagion, where a primary belief system overwrites the reality testing of everyone in the family. This case highlights the intersection of specialized occupational knowledge and a specific failure point in capacity-based mental health laws. To understand why this family became unreachable, we must first look at how their domestic reality was dismantled. The psychiatrist Alexander Gralnick proposed 4 subtypes of shared psychotic disorder. We can rule out folie simultaneae. Their beliefs followed a clear line of transmission. It also wasn't fully induced, as the family was previously healthy. The clinical evidence points directly to folie imposed induced. In folie impose, a dominant individual with established symptoms successfully imposes their delusional narrative on more suggestible associates. This process requires 2 specific conditions: the authority of the person spreading the delusion and the extreme social isolation of those receiving it. The index patient in this case successfully built a closed informational system. He acted as the family's sole authority and their only source of truth. The family's isolation was absolute. For 2 to 3 years, they lived solely on pension income and aggressively rejected visits from neighbors and relatives, suspecting they were also working for the government. This creates a psychiatric echo chamber. Without any contradictory external information, the family lost the ability to reality test their beliefs against the outside world. As the narrative took hold, it led to severe behavioral changes, specifically regarding how the family prepared and consumed food. Convinced that his family was occasionally collaborating with agents to poison him, the index patient began preparing all food himself. These rituals typically lasted 2 to 3 hours.
During these windows, he would lock his elderly parents in their rooms. He denied them access to basic facilities, including restrooms, regardless of their needs. This distrust extended to the police. Convinced emergency lines were compromised, the family provided false information to authorities to shield an index patient from observation. These rituals served a dual purpose. They were perceived as protection against threats, but they also reinforced the surveillance narrative through concrete, daily physical actions. Why did otherwise healthy adults accept this narrative so completely without demanding objective proof? Clinicians often see cases of partial psychosis. In these instances, a patient appears highly logical and well-informed, which effectively masks the underlying pathology. The index patient had a unique background. He was a former employee of an actual government intelligence agency. This occupational history provided a culturally plausible foundation for his surveillance delusions. To his family, his fears weren't fantasies. They were the concerns of an expert. This is occupational credibility. When an individual has genuine professional knowledge of covert technology, their delusional system becomes technically plausible to laypeople. This created a plausibility gap. Without high-level security clearance or counterintelligence training, his family lacked the technical vocabulary to disprove his claims. When the index patient is an intelligence professional, his resume essentially short-circuits the skepticism of those closest to him. Under normal circumstances, the treatment for folie imposée is strict physical separation. If you isolate the induced from the inducer, the secondary delusions usually remit. But in India, the Mental Healthcare Act of 2017 prioritizes individual autonomy and centers its framework on capacity-based consent. This creates a legal deadlock. Because the mother and siblings show no signs of primary psychosis, no hallucinations or disorganized thought, they legally retain decision-making capacity. This capacity empowers them to collectively refuse inpatient psychiatric treatment. Legally, they can block medical intervention for themselves and for the index patient. The Act also lacks provisions for community treatment orders. This means clinicians have no legal mechanism to mandate outpatient care or enforce a separation of the family members. The legislation relies on an individualistic framework, which creates a blind spot for cases where collective decision-making within a family is compromised. The law designed to protect patients from abuse inadvertently barred doctors from intervening, leaving the family in a cycle of shared pathology. As a final measure, doctors prescribed outpatient pharmacological intervention using a risperidone oral solution. Exercising their legal right to refuse care, the family declined inpatient hospitalization and left the clinic. The entire family unit was subsequently lost to follow-up. They vanished back into their isolated environment. Because the clinicians could not assess the treatment response or intervene further, the case exposes the severe limitations of current outpatient management for shared disorders. The family is now therapeutically orphaned, protected by the letter of the law, but physically and mentally trapped by the very delusions it prevented doctors from treating. While psychiatry typically treats mental illness as a condition of a single mind, Folie à Famille proves that pathology can operate as a networked system. Occupational credibility, prolonged isolation, and dependency are the specific drivers that can override a family's reality testing. For healthcare legislation to be effective, it must evolve to recognize these networked pathologies. Until the law acknowledges that a delusion can compromise an entire family unit simultaneously, individual capacity-based consent will continue to leave families adrift in